Hi, everyone, and welcome to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K. Laidlaw. Wendy has spent the last 2 years helping women with various stages of endometriosis to heal naturally after putting her condition into remission. After her own healing success from stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis, she's inspired to heal others, and her goal is to help some of the 175 million women know that there is another way other than painkillers, drugs, or surgery. This is the place to be for real talk with real people for real results, so you can learn how to heal your endometriosis naturally. Please note that the opinions expressed in this program may represent options, but are not a substitute for proper medical care. Before starting any new healthcare program, we recommend you consult with a health professional.
Hey everyone, it's Wendy K. Laidlaw here from Heal Endometriosis Naturally, and as always, I hope that this podcast finds you well. The title of this week's podcast is Endometriosis, a new report, old mythologies. So the other week, I received a Google alert into my email box. It advised me that under Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish Government's First Minister, a report is due for release this week reviewing the current medical diagnosis and treatment of endometriosis. Obviously, I welcome this wholeheartedly. It is about time. This report may offer a fantastic opportunity for influential figures across Scotland and the UK and beyond to have some serious talks about how endometriosis is approached with women. After all, it is essential to promote discussions about the condition and increase the rest of society's awareness surrounding it. That's stage 1. I will come to stage 2 later. However, as someone who used to suffer from stage 4 endometriosis for over 33 years and adenomyosis and 7 other major medical conditions, I do have one major concern. That major concern is that this new report will follow only one single narrative, the mainstream medical narrative of painkillers, drugs, and surgery. If it does, then I'm afraid my optimistic attitude towards this report will disperse rather quickly. I reached out by email to the Scottish Women's Health Minister direct to ask for a meeting and to discuss my pioneering and successful approach to be included in the report. I've had no reply, sadly. I also reached out to the Endometriosis UK charity in London and again asked to be included in the discussions. Again, I've had no reply. I will keep emailing him. As you see, I've discussed many times before, the issue is that the Western medical approach is only designed to suppress symptoms of illness and ailments, and in this case, endometriosis. The current antiquated medical approach to endometriosis is not designed to address the root causes of it. And as such, medicine regularly, if not almost always, falls short in many of its principal goals, which are to prevent disease, promote and maintain health, and relieve pain and suffering. Now, whilst medicine has many essential and indispensable roles, such as in the case of childbirth, accident and emergency and transplants, etc., in many other areas, it is failing us. You only have to look at the undeniable increase in many non-infectious diseases such as cancer, diabetes, and of course, endometriosis. Let's be clear that my intention is not to bash the medical field, for that would achieve very little. I've mentioned in my masterclasses and podcasts previously the medical marvels that the establishment has mastered, as discussed above. However, when it comes to diseases like endometriosis and adenomyosis, the medical machine struggles. The outdated gynaecological model is left flummoxed by the increasing array of symptoms and further conditions. Thus, I will not highlight the many failings and malpractices of medicine. In fact, I couldn't unless I wanted to be talking on this podcast for the remainder of my life. Yet I think it fitting to outline some shocking medical scandals from a few years ago that highlight the importance of caution with prescribed quick fixes and cure-alls. Bayer Healthcare Pharmaceuticals has faced hundreds of lawsuits, in fact, thousands of lawsuits now over claims that its birth control product, the Mirena coil, has caused several neurological side effects for women who used it. The Mirena intravene device, IUD, is a T-shaped piece of plastic inserted into the uterus to prevent pregnancy. The disorder is called pseudotumor cerebri, an idiopathic intracranial hypertension, which is amongst the risk factors, plus headaches, worsening vision, tetanus, and nausea. A former student of mine was left crippled in abdominal pain for over 2 years after the fitment of a Mirena IUD that perforated her womb and left her bleeding profusely and racked with fear that she would die. In 2018, Bayer was offered $12.2 million to settle 4,600 perforation cases in women. This is not talked about when they are offered to women in the first place. I do feel that if women were advised of the side effects and potential issues, then women would reconsider. Then again, think back to 2017, and many will remember hearing of the vaginal mesh crisis. It was an incident that devastated women's bodies and lives. Unfortunately, the consequences are still being felt today as medical establishments across the UK, USA, Australia, and Europe seek to correct this mistreatment. The vaginal mesh was a controversial implant used by medical professionals to treat stress incontinence and pelvic organ prolapses, both of which may occur after a hysterectomy. However, these artificial inventions had many side effects, and in some cases, many women's experiences were fatal. And let's talk about the gold standard procedure for the diagnosis of endometriosis alone, as prescribed by the Royal College of Surgeons here in the UK, which is, of course, a laparoscopy. Whilst many talk about how this is the only way to get a diagnosis, which obviously seems ridiculous in this day and age, few women talk about the complications and side effects of such invasive procedures. Our EndoBoss team gets countless emails every month sharing the butchery and harm caused by routinely prescribed protocols, like a laparoscopy. Emails share the severe complications and damage to their bowel and bladder, resulting in loss of organ function. In my own journey, I would have a partial bowel obstruction and develop adenomyosis immediately after my 6th laparoscopic surgery, and the swift return of all my endometriosis symptoms and ovarian cysts within 6 to 8 weeks of the procedure. And then there's this hysterectomy procedure and the HERS organization, HERS standing for Hysterectomy Education Resources and Services, that claim that some women may have over 100 different reported side effects after they've had a hysterectomy. But I'll save that for another podcast. It was reported in the book, The Hysterectomy Hoax by Dr. Stanley West, that only 2% of hysterectomies are actually required. After reading this, it left me reeling to hear how many women put themselves through a procedure they know little about or its after effects. And in some cases, the huge debt occurred or accrued to go privately in an attempt to quickly escape the abdominal pain. You'll note that you can't go back to the gynaecological department and get further assistance when you have no gynaecological parts left. So the gynaecological approach is the same worldwide for endometriosis. It is medical, and medical. The painkillers, the drugs, the surgery, and even the new and supposed less invasive options are not getting to the root causes of the condition. If they were getting to the root causes, and if they were effective, then why do so many women still have endometriosis, have repeated surgeries, and have them to continue, the numbers grow year after year? And these options tend to make the condition even worse and cause further complications. Yet, despite these undeniable issues with the medical approach, there is zero discussion about the natural approach in the mainstream. It really does shock me, because if any other industry had the same lack of success with one particular approach, they would actively take another, more successful approach. But not the medical machine. You see, it's big business. And of course, they don't always get it right. History tells the tale of doctors in Victorian times using leeches to help with illnesses, as they thought the body was ill from having too much blood. Then again, in the 1970s, doctors performed lobotomies, the removal of the prefrontal cortex, which they believed to help with depression. So going back to the Scottish Parliament report due out this week, I hope that the other alternative natural options are explored, considered, and or are even offered. Call me a cynic, but I very much doubt it. Early indications suggest that this report will suggest earlier diagnosis. Of course, I do welcome the idea, as many women have gone for decades in unexplained, excruciating abdominal pain and fighting to be believed. This, I also hope, opens up the possibility of the development of a non-invasive diagnostic tool, such as an effective blood test, like the Mitomic endometriosis test I mentioned in a previous podcast, being developed by MDNA Life Sciences and Professor Christian Becker from the Nuffield Department of Women's and Reproductive Health. The test claims to detect 9 out of 10 women by looking for biomarkers of endometriosis in the blood through close examination of mutations in mitochondrial DNA. Because the only diagnosis option for women at the moment right now is surgery, which of course causes more problems, adhesions, and inflammation. I'd like to think that these non-invasive blood tests would be discussed, but I fear that they won't even be mentioned. Many women have been mistreated, dismissed, and discarded by the same medical professionals for years, if not decades, as being hypochondriacs. Instead, these medical professionals should have recognized that pain with a period is not normal. So having a reliable and quicker and non-invasive diagnosis, hopefully in time, should help prevent women's pain and suffering from being ignored. I also hope that this Scottish Parliament report opens up the possibility for more information and education around women's health conditions to all ages. As I understand from one of my daughter's friends who qualified as a general practitioner and GP here in Scotland, she only received about 2 weeks of training about gynecology and a few weeks training about nutrition. This was out of her 6 years of training to be a doctor. So it is clear to see that if a doctor, who is a woman's first port of call, so to speak, is poorly informed and educated about endometriosis, then endometriosis could not be caught early. But if they were to be trained and educated better, endometriosis could be caught early and prevented by adopting the simple understanding that pain with a period is not normal mantra. With all of my students, the mere swapping out of wheat and gluten alone results in a significant reduction of abdominal and irritable bowel pain, IBS, within a few short days or weeks. And this doesn't even begin to touch on the other issues like some male doctors' disdain of women. In the recently published book Unwell Women, written by British historian Eleanor Cleghorn, the writer recants the hundreds of years of abysmal treatment of women by the male-dominated medical field. In the 1600s, mature midwives and female healers were banished and or burned at the stake for their wisdom, comfort, and knowledge to their fellow woman's body during her challenging times. The gynecological role was then passed over to men to deal with. Throughout history, women's health, in turn, was commandeered by men who, number one, had not once had the experience of one menstrual cycle, two, had never given birth to one child, and three, disliked women and tried to disempower them. Historically, as these doctors were not women themselves, they could not sympathize with their parents. Most had ingrained narcissistic, misogynistic, and patriarchal tendencies, absent of the empathy and compassion that women required, yet fueled with the perception that women were just hysterical, complaining, and neurotic. You just have to read back to Victorian times when hysteria was given as a medical diagnosis to women who dared to express or question their pelvic pain and distress with their male doctor. To diagnose a woman with hysteria when experiencing abdominal pain and suffering was so utterly demeaning and crushing to so many millions of women's spirit throughout history. Whilst an eye-opening and sobering book, unfortunately, the author is unaware that endometriosis is reversible and it is possible to heal naturally. So I challenge her statement that endometriosis is incurable and would ask her to amend this. Thousands of women, other women globally, and I can now testify to this fact. Hence why I do what I do. And sadly, while it is disturbing to hear the horrifying treatment of women gynecologically throughout history, the situation is not much improved or different today. The gynecological medical field is archaic, outdated, and is in need of being modernized rapidly. For example, the abdominal hysterectomy procedure is still the same procedure carried out today as it was 150 years ago. Even though you can naturally heal and preserve the woman's womb, ovaries, and cervix, Many doctors promote a hysterectomy as a cure-all to her pain and suffering. Those who know my story well by now know that this procedure was promoted to me as a cure. I guess I was lucky because I never attempted it, as my mother had been bullied into a hysterectomy at a young age and was never the same afterwards and would warn me regularly after taking doctor's advice. She once explained to me, whilst repeatedly weeping when her pain returned with a vengeance, that she suffered from bladder and bowel perforations and could never have close physical relations again with my father. The gynaecological training advocates only 3 approaches to women's pelvic pain and disorders, and that is painkillers, drugs, and surgery. The irony is that these approaches may end up causing more harm and hurt to a woman's body, which is already pained and inflamed. For example, look at the surgery, which involves cutting through the abdominal flesh into the abdominal cavity. Whether it is a woman or a robot, the woman's abdomen is still cut open, and objects still cause harm into our internal and tender tissues and organs. It's the old sledgehammer approach to an egg. I had an email from a lady who had a laparoscopy to diagnose her endometriosis. Unfortunately, some of the side effects she suffered were a perforation to her bowel after the so-called experienced surgeon had tried to remove some endometrial deposits off her bowel. One of my former clients suffered terribly as well after her laparoscopy and had to get a stomach pacemaker installed after one of the surgeons slipped up with his scalpel. I know mistakes happen, but why aren't women warned about these potentialities? And why aren't they being informed of a safer, side effect-free route? If I had been warned about the laparoscopy procedure's side effects and potential issues, and the ones I end up having, I would have been forced earlier to stop and take the natural route. I would have saved myself decades of loneliness, depression, and pain. You see, this natural holistic method that I advise, i.e. the little protocols, is completely risk-free. The most beautiful element of the little protocols is there are no side effects. You work with what you have. You swap out what is toxic to the body. You put in what nourishes it. And bingo, your body does what it wants to do, which is to heal itself. Look at your finger. If you were to cut it now, it would start to heal all by itself. In fact, I'm growing reticent to compare little protocols as another route because, as a matter of fact, they are the only route. There is no comparison between the body's natural ability to heal and the medical machine's symptom suppressive approach. If you see a weed in your garden and chop its head off, it will grow back. That's what happens with surgery, painkillers, and drugs. Yet, if you pull that weed out by its roots, it does not grow back. And that's what I mean by the little protocols. You get to the roots of what's happening. Sadly, the doctors and surgeons promote painkillers, drugs, and surgery as a cure-all when that is false. If women were told painkillers and drugs and surgery merely suppress symptoms but could make them worse, I wonder if they would say, "But then what, doctor? And how are you going to help me, doctor, put this condition in remission?" I wish all young girls were taught in school how to systematically address the root and underlying causes of all health, especially period pains. Because by doing so, you empower the child and thus the adult for life. If children know how to be healthy and poison-free from a young age, they will never suffer. After all, surely prevention is better than the cure. As I'm sure you recognize already, things must change. It is essential for women's healthcare and gynecological treatment to change. Change in the right direction, though, is the key, period. Pun intended, of course, here. The current medical machine gives a woman a choice of medical treatments, but in reality, there is no choice. Painkillers, drugs, and surgery are only symptom suppressors and not treatments. They all have side effects. Painkillers, for example. You have painkillers that cause irritation and inflammation into the intestinal tract and bowels, areas that are already highly inflamed. Painkillers rarely lessen the pain completely, that a woman with endometriosis endures. And she doesn't understand that pain is a sign and a signal, a sign that something is going wrong inside the body. Of course, painkillers may be necessary sometimes to help and try and dull the pain, but they never should be taken continuously, otherwise they may end up affecting her liver function. If painkillers are all you're prescribed, then how can doctors ever expect you to get better? Remember, pain is a sign or a signal. Think of it like this. Smoke is often a sign or signal of potential fire. If you wish to get rid of that smoke and attempt to fan it away, there will still be a fire blazing below, and that the smoke will continue to rise. But if you ignore the smoke for a second and you focus on and get rid of the deeper problem, that of the fire, you will inadvertently get rid of the smoke too. That is why you must, if you do take painkillers regularly, to seek other alternatives like natural anti-inflammatories that have been used for over 50 years in other countries, like serapeptase, and get the proper support to identify the root causes. Drugs are the other element. Medications, for example, like Lupron, come paired with an extensive warning label listing all of its many toxic side effects. Again, they do not address the underlying root causes of endometriosis and leave the woman experiencing more side effects and problems than before she started taking the drug. And surgery. A laparoscopy operation is currently the recommended route for an endometriosis diagnosis and sometimes treatment, which seems bizarre. The very act of cutting a body open causes more adhesions and inflammation, and again does not address the root underlying causes of endometriosis. Many women, like myself, went back for multiple endometriosis procedures, which attest to the inadequacy of the procedures in the first place. Yet, despite the ineffectiveness of the medical machine treatment and their numerous side effects, the medical machine continues to freely prescribe these treatments to women with endometriosis. So how is it that Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, can fly into space at the cost of over $5.5 billion? That's a B, by the way, $1 billion for only 4 minutes. I think this quote by Mahatma Gandhi says it best. The world has enough of everybody's need, but not enough for everybody's greed. Now, I'm not bitter about this spaceflight achievement. On the contrary, I think it's inspiring to see what is possible for humans to achieve. But why are we focused into space when we have plenty of issues on planet Earth already? How is it that so much attention and investments are poured into this big boys excursion when women's pelvic health is still a global crisis? One has to question that if this was about Jeff's pelvic health or organ, would treatment have significantly advanced in that area? Or would he be at least trialing some super duper wonderful new approach? I think so. I'd be willing to bet that that would be the case. Albert Einstein said, 3 great forces rule the world: stupidity, fear, and greed. As a human race, our society and way of living have evolved spectacularly. We are in a period in time of constant discovery that accelerates every day. We are a tremendously creative, innovative, and intelligent species. After all, we have designed many a rocket's flight to the moon. We can even get robots to planet Mars. But like I said before, perhaps we need to pay more attention as a society on planet Earth, and with some more attention to planet Venus too. Again, pun intended here, after Mars and Venus. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. For all our creative insight and brilliance, we as humans are also meant to hold a deep level of care for one another. At least that is what we're all told to us by the dominant male species in the world. This is what makes us human, is it not? But where has our humanity gone? It is very clearly lacking, and this is evident far from the confines of women's health. Again, you just have to look at the news, which I rarely listen to due to the extreme negativity of the reporting and distressing reports, for example, in the fall of Kabul recently. I also believe that another reason more has not been done or invested or prioritized in the gynecological medical field is that most women are conditioned from a young age to be a good girl and to be seen and not heard. I wonder how many women listening to this now were told by their mother and father to sit pretty like a good girl, don't whinge or complain, with the message that you were a bad girl if you spoke out and up. That long-term conditioning translates into generations of women silenced and shamed into the shadows of secret suffering. Many women are reluctant to share their anxiety, fear, sadness, depression, and decades of pain, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Just look at how embarrassing and shameful it is for a woman to mention her period, even to a man, let alone to another woman who also goes through the same thing every month. And how many young girls were told by a well-meaning older generations of mums, aunts, and grandmothers that pain with a period is normal. So let's be super clear, once and for all, that pain with a period is not normal. Just because many women experience a painful monthly cycle every month and have done so for years does not mean that it is normal. Commonality does not equal normality. Many women do not realize that pain in the body is the body's only way to communicate that something is not right. So women do not know how to pay attention, increase their awareness, and become a detective of their body. They do not know how to take back power and control. But what do? What they are conditioned to do. They go to the doctor, a complete stranger in a white coat. We are conditioned as women to pass over our body to a complete stranger in a white coat without question, even though that person has no way of comprehending or understanding what we are experiencing. How could they? Most are male. Most are men who have never had a period. Most are men who might only relate to the pelvic pain if they'd ever had an appendix removed due to the excruciating pain. Because that appendix pain is the only comparable pain he might ever possibly understand. If the doctor is a woman and she isn't in your situation, i.e. suffering from endometriosis, how could she understand? She cannot know your body as you do. It is shocking to hear the number of women coming forward to share the mistreatment, insults, derogatory remarks, gaslighting, and insinuations from doctors as they state the woman's pain is attention-seeking behaviour. All that emotional turmoil has undoubtedly got to damage a woman's spirit, sense of reality, and sense of worth. Too many times I read and receive emails from women who have been so poorly treated, it actually tightens my chest with anxiety for them and brings tears to my cheeks. Yet each day, these emails also fill me with such a drive to ensure that something's got to change, and fast. I read with disbelief and despair time and time again that women are treated so poorly by the very people who are supposed to care for them. And this poor treatment doesn't just come from doctors. As was the case with me, I'd often find that many women also have experienced a pattern of prolonged emotional mistreatment from their family, their partners, friends, and work colleagues. This is so underappreciated. So few people appreciate the effect that toxic people can have on their health. We have all been conditioned by society, school, and various religions that everybody is inherently well-meaning, good, kind, and helpful. This message is hazardous. All too often I hear and work with women who have overgiven of themselves in relationships to the point and state where they're almost at breaking point, overwhelmed, burnt out, and sometimes suicidal. Their bodies reflect this with exhaustion, tiredness, chronic fatigue, and of course, menstrual pain, cysts, and endometriosis. In this way, whilst the Scottish Government report is so welcomed, I am concerned that the spokeswomen and men are all medically minded and medically focused. They remain conditioned by the long-suffering medical narrative that painkillers, drugs, and surgery is the only approach, and do not appreciate nor know about the natural route as an option. I would welcome an opportunity to share my success story and that of the many women around the world whom I have worked with. I believe women need more than just one medical machine narrative. The medical machine is biased by its very nature, and most importantly, comes with many side effects. It doesn't actually address the underlying root cause. I believe a balanced approach is required. I believe women should be given the option of a natural approach to consider. A woman in the UK was recently reported saying she felt that her hand was forced and that she had to have a hysterectomy as she was unaware of any other option. And that other natural option must be integrated into the doctors' and surgeons' training early on at medical school. For indeed, their oath is to do no harm and to help and heal others. This is not about ego or power over a weaker woman. This is about empowering women to health so that she can share this natural narrative with her daughter or daughters and or her granddaughters. This is about shifting the sands of time forever and for the betterment of all her female family for generations to come. And importantly, if the medical machine narrative is the only narrative chosen to be in the Scottish Government report, then I hope, for the sake of women's physical and emotional health, that all the side effects to this medical approach are made more transparent, open, and available for women to see so they understand before they make their choices and they then go forward and make fully informed decisions. But of course, as you know, I'm an advocate of the ladle protocols. They worked for me after 33 years of endometriosis and adenomyosis. So I know all women, whatever their religion, culture, skin color, can benefit from them. Whether or not that benefit means full healing and remission, or just even an improvement, but ultimately is the empowerment over the endometriosis and adenomyosis conditions that matters the most. I'm a strong advocate of promoting awareness, information, education, inspiration, and empowerment, or what I call AIEIE. A is for awareness, I is for information, E is for education, I for inspiration, and E for empowerment. All girls and women of all ages should be aware that pain with a period is not normal. They should get access to a variety of information and be holistically educated about their body. Then they can be given the inspiration to make the necessary changes, which will ultimately lead to empowerment and reduced and or no pain. Stage 2 is important as well. I would suggest the removal of the word incurable from all the medical machines, dialogue, and the media's reporting of endometriosis. You just have to go on to Google and Google endometriosis, and you will see scattered over most articles, apart from my header, of course, Heal Endometriosis Naturally, that the condition is stated as incurable. But this is utterly false, misleading, and totally demoralizing for women who maybe have the condition or recently diagnosed. You will note that this word incurable is not used in front of cancer or heart disease or many other common conditions. So why is incurable stated in front of endometriosis? It takes a woman on average almost 8 years to get a diagnosis of endometriosis. For most women, a diagnosis is a huge relief when they have a name for what's been happening in their abdomen and pelvic area for decades, and can then finally share with others who doubted them that there is actually an explanation of what was wrong with them. If these same women then go on to Google and research how to heal the condition naturally and are met with a barrage of searches stating that endometriosis is incurable, that may be very distressing, depressing for a woman to read. And then, of course, being repeatedly advised that the only way to manage their symptoms is through painkillers, drugs, and surgery may be even more dispiriting. So therefore, I would suggest all medical personnel, journalists, editors, and media personnel consider the implications of adding that word, incurable, before endometriosis and refrain from using it and remove it. Because being given the diagnosis may be frightening enough for a woman, but the abdomen's punch is being told it's incurable. It is not incurable. I am living proof. I've cured the incurable. There are hundreds, now thousands of women who have learned how to put the endometriosis condition into remission. It is worth repeating. The ladle protocols are not a quick fix. nor a snake oil or one magic supplement or just a diet approach to healing. The Laidlaw Protocols is a multi-modal, whole body, whole person, holistic approach which takes time to implement and integrate, at least 6 to 12 months. Endometriosis is a complex condition that many women have had for many years, if not decades. So the body needs time to heal. It does not need more cutting, adhesions, inflammation, and irritation. The human body has an incredible ability to heal itself. Therefore, the attitudes and approaches to endometriosis and all other conditions should be what is preventing the body's natural ability to heal. I grew up with a mother who had endometriosis and would be emotionally abused and bullied by the gynaecological medical profession. She was promised miraculous healing after hysterectomy. That did not happen, and my mother was never the same afterwards. She felt lied to and discarded afterwards. Her endometriosis symptoms returned in company with many other symptoms, including severe bowel and bladder issues, osteoporosis, and hair loss. Her body was thrown into an immediate and cruel menopause, and she became addicted to the painkillers that did little to dull her prolonged post-operative pain. Did you know that only 2% of women who get a hysterectomy actually require one? Did you know that surgeons in America are required to carry out 70 hysterectomy procedures to qualify as a surgeon? So does that not strike you as a little biased? Does that not make you question the validity of a surgery at all? That other 98% of women are being operated on simply so doctors can qualify and so that surgery practice can maintain the high salaries they pay their surgeons? Do you think the situation would be somewhat different if this were a discussion of the removal of men's genitalia? Heck yes. And boys and their expensive toys flying into the sky and space is where the focus is on. That is where the billions of dollars and pounds go to. Why? Because men are not affected by pelvic ill health. They have never had the prolonged, agonizing decades worth of pelvic pain. And let's be clear again here, for the record, this is not a man bashing or anti-man campaign. Certain things are bad for men and that women will never understand. But the facts remain, women have been unfairly treated for too long, almost as far back as records go. And a lot of that has been at the hands of men, sadly. So this is the opportunity to share openly the issues affecting women's quality of life, their ability to work, have children, make plans, let alone experience any joy, fun, or pleasure. So my approach with this Scottish Government's report would be to start with the most minor areas and build up from there. Firstly, I request that all who write about endometriosis do so with great respect to the women who have it or may be about to be diagnosed with it. To please remove the word incurable from all reporting about endometriosis. Removing incurable would be a responsible act and may open up new possibilities to women for hope and healing. The use of the word incurable closes that shard of light, that glimmer of light for a woman who may have suffered for decades and is hanging on by a thread. There was a very sad story in the UK paper recently of a 26-year-old woman with endometriosis who overdosed on the very painkillers given to her by her gynaecologist. He would tell the inquest after her passing that I didn't know what else to suggest or give her. It made my blood boil. If only he had known about the Laidlaw protocols, at least to give her an option. So I would suggest also educating all medical professionals that endometriosis is not incurable. Show them the other options, the success stories, the case studies that they can suggest to their patients when the painkillers, the drugs, and surgery does not work again. Gynecologists are just a byproduct of their medical training run by government bodies and institutions, predominantly men who have never experienced even one period. They don't know what they don't know. The Laidlaw protocols has been proven to work with my own endometriosis and adenomyosis and help many other women around the world. The Laidlaw protocols are not complicated. The Laidlaw protocols are super simple. They work with what you have. They recognize that your body always wants to heal itself and help you figure out what might be preventing that natural healing process. But of course, natural body healing takes time to work. So for example, if you cut your finger on a kitchen knife, your amazing body will almost instantly start to heal, as I said earlier. You may not see it, but the healing process has begun. It does it automatically and naturally. You couldn't stop that healing process if you tried. And as soon as you let the healing process continue, your body would continue to heal. Natural healing is just what your body does. Therefore, the questions and discussions of the Scottish Government's report should go to a deeper level than just early diagnosis, which of course is important, and medical symptom suppression with painkillers, drugs, and surgery. Any significant report by any government needs to ensure all aspects are explored by the use of AIEIE, awareness, information, education, inspiration, and empowerment for all women. Any government report must ensure that women with endometriosis are treated with respect and seriousness by all they come into contact with. You see, women with endometriosis tend to have very similar personality types. They're very strong women. You have to be to experience crippling and debilitating pain every month. Yet they're very sensitive. Their bodies are far more attuned to the 5 poisons I refer to than most. And they're very resilient. They keep going and searching for answers when many would give up. They also have a very strong perfectionist part and people-pleasing part, which can sometimes drain them and exhaust them when they need to rest and build themselves up. All this needs to be understood by the professionals intending to help the women as well. Many women need a safe and encouraging support community that lifts each other up and doesn't tear each other down, as a chauvinistic, misogynistic, and patriarchal society often does. Many women need to know that their innate sensitivity is their strength so that they don't disown who they are for fear of looking weak in a man's world. Women have to be encouraged that the journey to healing endometriosis naturally is by going inwards to themselves and not outwards to a stranger. Because ultimately, you know your body better than anyone else in the world. The issue is that you may not have been taught at all how to read the signs and symptoms of your body, and then how to take back power and control. Like visiting a new and foreign country, when you first arrive, you do not know the landscape or the language. You need a guide to guide you, and before long you understand and can navigate like a local. The same goes for your body. I truly understand that the thought of stopping and listening to a body that is in pain may seem contradictory or overwhelming and too difficult a task, but it really isn't. And it's essential for your true healing and putting the condition in remission to start to listen. For those who've been following me for some time, you know that I suggest starting small with writing those awarenesses and thoughts and fears and feelings in a private journal as you wake up in the morning. I understand that there may be a part of you that says, no, thanks, Wendy. That seems too simple. I don't have time. And how on earth can journaling help me with my endometriosis? But please do it anyway. As the world's leading expert on healing endometriosis naturally, I encourage you to trust me. And most importantly, I encourage you to start to trust yourself. Trust the fact that you have everything already inside your body to heal. Trust your amazing body's ability to repair and regenerate cells all by itself. Trust that your immune system is an amazing fighting machine seeking to do its job. It's not so much what we put in our bodies or do to our bodies that helps it, is what we prevent from going into it, on it, and is around it that is the real secret. So when the full Scottish Government report for endometriosis is released this week, I will be reading it thoroughly. Whilst my emails have gone unanswered and were not responded to, and I was not given the opportunity to share my road less traveled, the route that has enabled me to cure the incurable, I will keep reaching out to them and the larger bodies of people with the most influence to share what is working as another route. In the future, I intend to run some peer-reviewed and clinical case studies on the effectiveness of the ladle protocols. It is important to get the right people to listen and evoke the necessary change that is required for women with endometriosis to be educated with the complete information they need to put the condition into remission. Doctors and surgeons said it was impossible for me to put my endometriosis condition into remission, but I did it anyway. As Nelson Mandela said, it seems impossible until it's done. So I do hope that any woman reading this or listening to this has had a light of hope ignited in them to know that there is another way, other than just painkillers, drugs, or surgery. A fully educated woman is a powerful one, and it is time for unbiased and impartial information education to be shared globally and from a young age. Information should start with the schooling system by educating young girls about what is normal and natural in their bodies every month and what steps they can take themselves out with the medical machine. Young girls should not be educated about the medical machine of painkillers, drugs, and surgery and be told that that is their only option. The media and medical field also need to be responsible and mindful of the language and messaging they use by removing and omitting the word incurable from the front of endometriosis. So whilst this new report may be full of old medical mythologies, it is essential that women come together, like in olden times, to share what works for their bodies every month. It requires a sharing of simple yet positive, encouraging steps from older women to the younger generations, to show them how to become a detective and identify the root causes and underlying issues that were once causing their pain and symptoms in the first place. If that open dialogue can begin again, then women can become the boss of their bodies again. If that can be done, then girls and women worldwide can become a boss of their endometriosis and endoboss. And I finish with a quote and uplifting rally call to all the governments, women's health policymakers, and educational establishments around the world. As Nelson Mandela again wisely said, if you really want to change the world, help the women. To your health.
Thanks for listening to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K. Laidlaw. And I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate us. If you're interested in learning more, you can download your top 5 jumpstart tips at healendometriosisnaturally.com and jump on the VIP email list. Remember to keep you number one. The world needs a healthy you.